payment over a while may perhaps sound clever for a period, but when the law begins to look in your direction, it becomes a nightmare from which escape is difficult. Such businesses become swamped in a pile of debts and penalties, which will make payment a burden to businesses already under economic pressure. This is Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. I am Christy Kokukola and I am glad you could join me. Today on the show, we'll focus on escape options provided for such companies. The Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VAIDS. On the 29th of June this year, the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme was launched by the acting president Yemi Osinbajo when he signed an executive order. Let's begin by getting an in-depth understanding of the origin, processes and benefits of the tax amnesty scheme. "214 individuals nationwide pay 20 million naira or more in tax yearly. Unimpressive figures when compared with Nigeria's population of over 170 million people. At a workshop marking the launch of the VAIDS scheme, Nigeria's Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun said, with the numbers and natural resources in its possession, Nigeria has all it needs to run its economy untaxed.
From an economic perspective, Nigeria wants to be, aims to be, deserves to be a prosperous nation. We have all the resources, natural resources, we have human endowments, we have all the potential to become a prosperous nation. And we now need to sit down and study, what do prosperous nations do?
Over the years, processes and punishments for tax offenders in Nigeria have mainly been the payment of outstanding taxes with interests and penalties. With a target of 1.8 trillion naira value-added tax collection for the 2017 fiscal year, the Finance Ministry and the F IRS have to draw up new measures. The latest is a 9-month tax amnesty, the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VAIDS.
We tried to design it in such a way that it would make it easy for people. So we built in certain features. For example, we realized that with the current economic situation, some people just don't have the cash. So we've said, no problem. You can pay over a number of years, but you will pay. You must pay. We are ready to take a deferred payment terms in certain cases, but you must pay. Because the data that we have suggests that major money has either left the country completely or is within country, but never went through the tax net. Now, if we didn't have oil, we would probably have a better tax system today, or better level of compliance with tax today than we have. And our vision for Nigeria is to have an oil plus economy.
VAIDS hopes to raise Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio from 6% to 15% by 2020, widen the federal and state tax reach, reduce non-compliance, discourage use of tax hideouts, as well as end secret financial flows and tax evasion. The tax relief program, which offers limited amnesty, grants waivers to defaulters who voluntarily declare assets and pay their tax liabilities. It also mainly targets multinationals and high net worth individuals and covers all residents in Nigeria as well as companies operating within the country.
And this is a typical tax amnesty that you can find anywhere in the world. So it has been done in Turkey, in Indonesia, in South Africa. At the moment, our tax to GDP ratio is about 6%, which is quite poor when you compare Nigeria to the likes of Ghana, which is above 15%, and South Africa, which is getting close to 25%. And it's not because our tax rates are lower. So our tax rate, corporate income tax rate, is roughly 32%. But the tax rate in South Africa, when I was there, was 28%. In Ghana, I think it's about 25%. So it's not about the tax rate, it's about the number of people who are compliant, and many people are not compliant. But with this VAIDS, people can then come out, and then that would increase the amount of revenue the government can generate.
Tax defaulters now have between July 1st, 2017 and March 31st, 2018 to regularize their tax statuses in exchange for immunity, depending on how quickly they embrace the scheme within the given window. The steps for filing under VAIDS are as follows. The taxpayer submits a declaration form to VAIDS centers at the relevant tax authority, RTA. VAIDS officers review, confirm, and pass information to the RTA to assess the taxpayer. Taxpayers may also self-assess as provided in the law. The taxpayer agrees to a payment plan with the relevant tax authority. Once payment is complete, the taxpayer is issued a VAIDS tax clearance certificate by the RTA.
Essentially, the government just requires voluntary, complete, and defendable information, credible information to be provided by the tax authority, so by the taxpayer. So it is expected that taxpayer will be honest and will provide all of the information that is required to assess the amount of tax. But I must add that because of the volume of work that may be required, it may be very helpful for taxpayers to seek professional guidance from their advisors to guide them through that process. The finance minister did mention that prior to the launch of the scheme, there was a group of people that were set up to assist government in mining data, Project Lighthouse, they call it. And what the team practically did was to go through available databases, BVN, NCC, travel information, land registry, CAC documents, and all of those, just to be able to gather, the amount of information regarding those who potentially should pay taxes. And that amount of information with the government, it's a lot heavy.
The tax amnesty scheme covers taxes owed to the federal, state, and local governments. These include companies' income tax, personal income tax, petroleum profits tax, capital gains tax, stamp duties, tertiary education tax, and technology tax. You're watching Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. After the break, we'll have an exhaustive conversation with the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Babatunde Fowler, on the processes and projections for VAIDS. What sanctions await tax offenders who fail to utilize the 9-month window? And shall we expect an extension? Thank you for sticking around. You're watching Nigeria Going Beyond Oil. Now, whether you're a taxpayer or a tax offender, Nigeria's official tax collector, the F IRS, is no stranger to you. I spoke with the executive chairman of the agency, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, on whether or not there will be an extension for tax offenders who, for whatever reason, cannot take advantage within the 9-month window, and really who gets to benefit the most.
We will give up to 3 years instrumental payment plans, depending on the agreement reached with the taxing authority, either with the state or the F IRS. So we have taken all those measures into consideration. And we've also looked at the weaknesses of both the F IRS and the state internal revenue boards, because if we had been a bit more proactive, there wouldn't have been this situation whereby companies had government tax revenue and didn't pay for a year or two and use that money either in expanding their business or use it in whatever way they did. But now we've increased our level of monitoring we're making sure that we monitor more closely all taxpayers at both levels, both at the federal and the state level.
Let's look back at the initial tax amnesty program that the F IRS initiated. What did not work about it?
No, it worked very well. Like I said, we had 2,700 organizations register for it. They paid 27 billion naira within 45 days, and we let them pay the balance over 9 months. So to us, it worked very well. But now we've taken it a step further. We're now saying that if you even have assets you didn't declare, you are making income from investments abroad that you never declared, both for individuals and corporate organizations, we're giving you another opportunity to come forward. After this period, this 9-month period, then we will use all measures of law to make sure that we do collect the government revenue.
Is it accurate to say that the VAIDS scheme is a fallout of the initial tax amnesty program introduced by the F IRS?
Well, I won't call it a fallout, but it's a similar program, but now includes individuals, and it's also focused on assets that Nigerian organizations and Nigerian individuals have abroad, on which they earn additional income.
VAIDS has come into existence mainly by the signing of an executive order, but I am aware that it also draws some power and requires assistance for implementation from state governments. Do you see any concerns for implementation?
No, not at all. All the state governors were present when the idea of VAIDS was, first of all, came up. And at the Executive Council meeting, the Honorable Minister of Finance did make a presentation where I was present, and we answered questions that the governors may have, because basically the states have taxing constitutional authority, and they all bought into the whole idea that we should come together and make sure that we focus both on the individuals that are taxpayers to the states and corporate organizations that are taxpayers to the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Are you at this point able to give us an assessment, say maybe are you getting any feelers or any early responders yet to the program?
Well, yes, we are getting people with questions. And considering that they have up until March 31st, some people are a bit slow to react. I'm sure some people are taking out calculators and trying to estimate how much they owe and how they're going to go about it. But I certainly believe in the first 3 months, or after people have got all the information that they require, that we'll start to see some action.
For those businesses who are caught up in the Nigerian factor situation, who would like to start filing for the amnesty program in the 9th month, would there be at all any consideration for an extension?
No extension whatsoever.
And what steps are you taking to ensure that Nigerians who are self-employed and adequately covered by the VAIDS scheme actually do take advantage of it?
Well, there are 2 ways. One way that we have started to talk about is for love of country. If you know that you love Nigeria, you want to be part of the growth of Nigeria, Nigeria needs revenue to develop. Now, the other side of the coin is what we call consequences. If you don't obey the law, there are consequences. We can charge you to court. We can stop you from carrying on business as a corporate organization. We can sell your assets based on a court order. For the individuals, we can also charge them to court. And also, if we find out that they have falsified their tax returns, which is a criminal action, we can charge them for criminal activities.
What about the unregistered businesses? How does VAIDS hope to cover them?
Well, we're advertising. We're calling on them every day to register. Now, if they don't register within the period, I can give you 2 or 3 examples. You have a car. You want to renew your registration. Part of the conditions say that you should show your tax credit certificate. If you want to do business with any government organization, part of the conditions is that you should show your tax credit certificate. We've spoken to the general public that even if you want to get services from government, the law says you should also show your tax return certificate. So if you wanted to renew your passport, you wanted to get a new passport as an adult, and you're employed or you earn an income, you should equally show your tax return certificate. Now, if you're an adult and you're not working, nothing stops you from getting a tax return certificate with zero income. So it is a condition. So even for those who are not employed, they should go to the tax office, register, and say, right now I don't have a job, I earn no income, and they'll be given a tax return certificate with zero income. So when they do start, at least they're already in the tax net, they're registered, they've done what is required, and we'll take it from there.
Within the 9 months amnesty window offered to tax defaulters under the VAIDS scheme now, what would you say are your revenue projections?
Well, not only for F IRS, but we do have a projection. We believe that based on other countries that have had similar tax amnesties, looking at their economies and their cultures, I'll call it their cultures, we believe that we should be able to get at least $1 billion US.
$1 billion US?
Yes.
How achievable is that?
I think it's quite achievable.
Do you have figures backing that up? Have you tried to run, what's the word now, field research ahead of the 9 months expiration, see how feasible this is,
well,
considering unregistered businesses?
Yes.
Also?
Well, first of all, you start from the GDP. If we say we have the largest GDP in Africa, then we look at South Africa. South Africa ran the same program. So we looked at how much South Africa generated. We looked at our little experience last year in 2016 with the corporate organizations. They were owing close to about 75 billion, all right? Out of which they paid 25 billion immediately. And when we now look at extending it to 40 million other Nigerians and looking at how much tax that they should pay, let me give you a very simple example. Lagos State, when I was chairman, if you were caught for any traffic offense by LASMA, they would ask you for your tax clearance certificate. So you own a vehicle that is worth 5 million naira. You're caught for a traffic offense. Easily, if you own the vehicle, that means at least 5 million naira has passed through your hands. You'll fill a tax form and you'll pay at least the minimum tax, maybe 5,000 or 7,500. But from then on, you're in the tax net. Now, if you purchased a car in Lagos, we'll write you a letter of congratulations, congratulating you on your new car, assess a value to it, and if it's 3 million or 1.5 million, we'll expect you to declare that as your income and pay taxes on it. So there are different ways to handle individuals and also different ways to handle corporate organizations.
Looks like a cocktail of measures. Do you find them overwhelming?
Not overwhelming, no. We've deployed a lot of technology right now so that we can capture most transactions. If, for example, you do business with any major corporate organization that has accurate records, we know all their contractors, we know the value of the contracts they've been given. So it's easy from getting information from the audit of the main business. We go down to the next level of the contractors who did get work from those organizations. And those that are not in the tax net, we add them on and we ask them to come forward and declare.
How does the F IRS hope to incentivize Nigerians to begin to consider paying tax as a culture?
I think the main major incentive is when Nigerians start to see what the additional revenue does for them. When the state governments have more money and the state government starts to repair their roads, or the state governments start to put in place more facilities, either hospitals or schools, then they'll begin to see the benefits of the payment of tax. So even that small amount that may not really inconvenience them, but they see the benefit. I'll give you a typical example. Ogun State's Okada riders, they now pay an average of about 120 million per month in taxes to the state government. So they can see the benefits that is accruing to them. So they might pay 100 naira, they might pay 1,000 naira per month, but the benefits that they see from the state government, where their children can have free healthcare, free education. The government has set up workshops for garages and other little things for the small-scale businesses. And other states like Lagos have also done similar things. So as individuals start to see the benefits, that 5,000 naira that they refuse to pay as taxes per annum before, a lot of people will start to pay that minimum tax or the amount of tax that they owe government.
Now, the Ministry of Finance and the Federal Inland Revenue Service will be working with asset tracers to identify taxable yet undisclosed items. Recall also that the VAIDS scheme is powered by an executive order and a memorandum of understanding across the 36 states of the Federation. Should we worry about legal boundaries or loopholes? Tax lawyer Theophilus Emuwa breaks it down for us.
The order is not directing state governors who have their own autonomy, to do, something, on the order of the federal government. It's an order saying, let us try and apply these principles, in these circumstances. And it is for the state governments to voluntarily agree to cooperate and participate in this exercise. So that is where I believe the MOU with the state governments comes in. They are agreeing to participate.
So within the provisions of the VAIDS scheme, are there any legal loopholes that a tax offender could hide under?
The law as it stands, in the absence of VAIDS, is that if you don't pay your tax on time, then you are liable to pay a penalty and interest on the unpaid tax, or the late paid tax. So that's the law as it stands today. So there's nothing to escape. What VAIDS is doing is to remove that possible burden of interest and penalty, and to say to you, if you voluntarily tender your tax during this period, we will agree not to apply the law to the full. That is, we will not ask for the penalty and interest which we are entitled to ask for.
So then it's a case of the tax collector having all the powers but being lenient in their applications of it so far.
You are very correct. You're quite right there. The tax authorities in most states have not been as proactive as they could be. The method by which you collect information is not limited in the tax law. The tax law entitles the tax authority to use information that it acquires from anywhere. In fact, there are provisions in the tax law, for example, that entitle the F IRS to go to your bank and ask your bank for your bank statements. And the bank is obliged to provide those statements to the F IRS. It is a power which they don't seem to use often, but it is one that actually exists. It's difficult to complain, because if the law has always been that I must pay such and such a tax, and for one reason or the other, I've been able to get away with not paying it, the day the authorities decide to implement the law, it's difficult to say that they're doing something wrong or illegal, because they were lenient all these years.
So there we have it. No extension beyond the 9 months amnesty window, no legal loopholes, no hiding place for tax defaulters who fail to take advantage of the scheme. And that's our show for today. For more information on the Voluntary Income and Assets Declaration Scheme, for frequently asked questions and registration processes, please visit the website www.vaids.gov.ng. Thank you for watching. I am Christy Cole for Buona.